to today's webinar for Data Management 2025. So this is one of our webinars in the series that we've been running. So we're looking today at clearing your audit trail. We'll spend around about 45 minutes in total looking at that. My name is Michael. I'm a learning facilitator here at Sage, so I'll be presenting today. We're joined today by Laura as well. Laura will be on hand to answer all of your questions. So do keep her busy, keep the questions coming. Keep her out of mischief during the session. And as I say, we'll try and keep sort of answer as many of those questions as we can. Just before we do get stuck into the webinar though, just a little bit of housekeeping for those of you that may be fairly new to our webinars. It might even be your first one. You don't need a microphone. If you've got one, it will be muted. That'll be done automatically. You can't unmute yourself. Any questions for myself or Laura during the session today, you'll need to pop them into the questions panel. Just click the little speech bubble icon, which is on your toolbar down the right-hand side of your screen. When you do that, you'll have access to that box in the bottom right-hand corner. Pop your question or your comment in there. Remember to click send, otherwise we won't get that. As I say, we'll try our best to pick those up for you. If anyone wants a copy of today's handouts or the slides that we're using, those are available to download during the session. Do take that opportunity during the session. They're not available afterwards for this particular session. However, do watch out for your follow-up email. You'll get that round about maybe about an hour after we finish today's session. That will include a link to today's recording. So if you need a bit of a recap, maybe you're just considering clearing your audit trail, but maybe when the time comes, it's a bit further down the line, you might want a bit of a recap. So keep the link handy. That will be included on that follow-up email, along with a link to our webinar registration page and also to our recordings page as well. So if you've missed any sessions, do check out the recordings. Right, let's have a look at what we're going to be covering in this session then. In fact, just before we do that, just to remind you, for the data management badge that you can earn by attending some of the sessions, these are the sessions that we are covering. So it's session number 4 today. So we've already repeated the backing up, the data management tool, the company archives. Today we're on Clear Audit Trail. We've still got deleting customers, suppliers, nominal codes and bank accounts to cover. We're looking at clearing stock transactions for those of you that record stock levels in your software. So clearing those transactions and also maybe removing old product records as well. And also next week we'll be covering inactive records as well. I think that was on Wednesday afternoon next week, that one. Always a good one if you're in a position where you've got old records, maybe you're not in a position where you can delete them just yet, so you potentially can flag them as being inactive. Really easy feature to use, that one. But if you want to find out more, do get yourself signed up. And then we've got the quiz as well. We've got 2 sessions of the quiz planned in. So to earn the digital badge, if that's something you are interested in, you would need to attend any 5 of these 7 topics, whether that's from this month or last month, or a combination of the 2. And 1 of the quiz sessions. The quiz is the mandatory element of the data management badge. So towards the end of the month, we will be issuing those badges. That will be sent out via email. If you haven't yet registered for those upcoming sessions, again, watch out for that follow-up email. Right, this is what we're going to be covering for Clear Audit Trail then. So it's one of those topics that sometimes it just clicks, sometimes it doesn't. And some of you will sit there at the end of it and think, well, what would I want to do that for? Others will be thinking, yeah, that's what I want to do. I want to get rid of some of my older information. So, bit of a mixed bag, the reaction we normally get for this particular session. But let us know what you think at the end as well. Is it something you're likely to do? But anyway, to run through Clear Audit Trail and what it is, some of you will probably not heard of it before. So we're going to explain what it actually does in the first place, the criteria. So when you run Clear Audit Trail for information to be removed and cleared from your accounts, it will need to meet certain criteria. So we'll explain a little bit about that, what it entails. Some of that will catch people out. So we'll just explain that, and at least you'll have that list as well. We'll look at preparation. So what can you do to make sure the running of Clear Audit Trail is as effective as possible? We'll run through a bit of a demonstration as well, showing what that looks like. Not a great deal to see on that one, but we'll run through it just so that when the time comes, if it's something you do want to do, you can see the steps involved. And then we're going to cover the section at the end, why haven't my transactions cleared? It's a very popular question, that one. Well, not popular, common, I should say. So we quite regularly get that once people have cleared the audit trail, and coming back to people contacting our support team and saying, well, I've cleared my audit trail, but why haven't those transactions cleared? So what can you do about that? How do you track that down and find out why that's the case? And then just at the end, we'll explain more about the additional support. And if there are any outstanding questions, which maybe Laura hasn't been able to pick up during the session today, we'll hang around and try and answer a few of those for you as well. But as I say, keep your questions coming. We'll try and pick some of them up. Obviously, Laura's going to be working in the background trying to answer those. I'll try and get involved with that here and there as well. Right, okay, so let's get started. We'll dive straight into what the Clear Audit Trail actually does. Well, basically, it's an option in this software, and I'll use that word as well. It's an option. You do not have to clear the audit trail. I'll keep emphasizing that one. It's that it is an option. So if you sat there and you're one of those that think, well, why would I want to do that? I don't get that. Just remember, it is optional. You don't have to clear audit trail. But it removes transactions from your audit trail. Now, when I talk about the audit trail, I'm on about the list of transactions. So, you know, that option that you have down your toolbar, down the side, where it says transactions, where it lists all of your invoices, your bank payments, your receipts, any journals, credit notes. So those transactions on your audit trail doesn't impact on things like your invoicing list or your sales order list, your quotations list, your products area. It's to do with that transactions list. So that's what you're looking at, getting rid of older information that maybe you don't need to be in your accounts on a day-to-day basis. So you're archiving, you're taking a copy of it almost. Now what it will do, if necessary, it will post an opening balance journal for the transactions that are removed. Now we'll only do that on the nominal area. Well, let's try and explain why as we run through the demo as well. So if, like, let's say transactions totaling £1,000 worth of debit are cleared, but say £400 worth of credits are removed from a nominal code, to retain that balance, it may need to post an opening balance journal just for the difference, essentially. So they may or may not be posted depending on what gets cleared. And it will also create an audit trail history as well. So a list of the information that is actually cleared from your accounts. Right, now, before we get stuck into or go any further, I want to pick up on maybe some of those common questions that you're likely to have during the session as well. These are the questions that we get asked all the time. So again, going back to that first one, have I got to clear the audit trail? No, it's an option. When would you clear the audit trail? When would you actually do that? And also, how often would you do that as well? Those two probably go hand in hand. Now, clear audit trail, with it being an option, it's something that I think people associate. It's one of those processes that maybe people expect it would do it automatically as part of the year-end process, but it doesn't. It's an optional task that if you're going to run it, you'd probably run it immediately after running your year-end. But you can run it whenever you want. Again, it's optional, but you can run it whenever you want. Well, I suppose historically, you would run that after your year-end. How often would you do it? Again, no restriction on that one. But again, probably once a year if you are going to do that, again, immediately after running year-end. Pros and cons, something that you do need to really understand before you go for clearing your audit trail. Pros, well, by clearing your audit trail, so reducing the number of transactions that you have in your software, it means that there's less information in there. So things like when you want to check your data, it's going to be that much quicker because there's less to check. Running reports, going to generate that bit quicker. Even just accessing certain screens, activity screens, might be that bit quicker because there's less for it to filter through. Your backups would be that much smaller as well. Just again, because there's less information. But on the con side, the downside of clearing your audit trail is that you're removing the history. So you're getting rid of older information from your accounts. Now, we'll always get people asking, well, what about HMRC? They say I need to have 6-7 years of historic records. That's fine. As part of your clear audit trail process, you might think about archiving your data, a bit like you would maybe do as part of your year end. So by archiving, you've got a copy of that data that you can always refer to. Yes, it removes transactions from your live company, but if you needed to refer to information from, say, 5 years ago, maybe you could just access the archive to view that. But it's not in your live data, as it were, your live company. So there are pros and cons. But again, I keep coming back to that first point there, that common question, have I got to? You don't have to. So the important thing is to understand what it's going to do. If you're going to clear it, when you clear up to, but also what the pros and cons are of doing that. It's not, well, the only way you can undo a clear audit trail is by restoring. So if you were to clear the audit trail and you think, sort of a month later, I wish I hadn't done that, I want to go back. The only way you can do that is restore back to that point prior to you clearing your audit trail, and that would mean that all of your data is taken back to that point in time. So anything you've done since that point, you would need to redo. So we like to try and give you that full picture. Now, when you clear your audit trail, you'll see this in the demonstration in just a couple of minutes. The first thing it's going to prompt you for is, when do you want to clear up to? So it'll prompt you to enter a date. Now that date must be prior to the start of your current financial year. You can't enter a date within your current financial year or beyond that. So that's the one restriction on the date. But prior to your current financial year, you can enter any date you want. So it's up to you to choose. So if you want to retain your current year plus, let's say, the previous year, you might want to retain the previous 5 years in your live company. But anything prior to that, you might think, well, actually, I don't really need that in my live company anymore. I want to get rid of it. So it's up to you to choose that date when you clear up to. That's your choice. So criteria-wise, for transactions to be cleared, they must be dated on or prior to the date you specify. The transactions, obviously, therefore, must be dated prior to your current financial year. Won't get rid of anything from your current financial year or later on. The transaction itself must be marked as fully paid. So, for instance, if it's an invoice, if it's part outstanding, it's not going to remove it, it's going to leave it there. So it must be marked as being fully paid. If it's a bank transaction, it must be bank reconciled. If it's a VATable transaction for your specific VAT scheme, it must be VAT reconciled. If you use the CIS module in Sage 50 accounts for subcontractors, and the transaction itself is classed as a CIS transaction, then it must be CIS reconciled. So it must have been included on a CIS return. If you use the not-for-profit options in Sage, so the charities option, and you use gift aid, so gift aid for donations, if it's classed as a gift aid transaction, then the transaction must also be gift aid reconciled as well. So I think CIS reconciled and gift aid reconciled probably get into more of a, I suppose what I would term those niche areas. Fewer customers actually use those options. But if you do, it's going to form part of that criteria. The final part of the criteria is something that quite often catches people out, and I've got an example for this one in a moment as well, is that if a transaction is allocated, so let's say you've got an invoice and a receipt, then those linked transactions, those allocated transactions, both of them must meet the above criteria, otherwise they will not be cleared. So for instance, where you've got an invoice paid by a receipt, it can't get rid of the invoice without being able to get rid of the receipt. It just won't allow you to do that. The invoice would remain on there until both transactions, the linked transactions, all meet that criteria that's listed. So I'm going to give you an example. So let's say we clear our audit trail to the end of 2023, so up to the 31st of December 2023. Now, if we were to run through that, and let's just take these two transactions as an example, let's say they're for the same customer. We've got an invoice which is dated in December 2023, but the receipt against that, paying off that invoice, is dated in 2024. So if we were to clear to the end of 2023, then just looking at that basic transaction information, the invoice itself meets that criteria, and therefore you would think, well, it should be cleared. But the receipt against it doesn't. One, because of the date, it's dated after the date that you've chosen to clear up to. But also secondly, even if the date was okay, I've got it where it says bank reconciled N, so it's not reconciled. It needs to be bank reconciled because it's a bank transaction. So both parts would need to meet all of that clear audit trail criteria to be cleared. So even if I, for instance, let's say I cleared up to the end of January 2024, so both transactions are prior to that date, but again, it wouldn't remove it because that receipt doesn't meet all of the criteria. So it can't get rid of the invoice either. So that's something to be aware of. If you clear your audit trail and you think, well, why hasn't that one cleared? It's prior to the date I've specified. It might be a linked transaction or an allocated transaction that's causing the issue. Now, before we get stuck into the demonstration, I just want to quickly mention preparation. So if you're about to clear your audit trail, let's say you think, well, actually, I think it's a good idea. We've got hundreds of thousands of transactions. We might want to get rid of some information. How can you get the most from it? I see, make it as effective as possible. Get rid of as much as you possibly can. Well, there's a few tasks you'd want to complete. One is check your data, just make sure it's all right. You'd obviously want to take a backup. It'll force you to take a backup as you run that process anyway. But also archive your data. So if you're clearing your audit trail immediately after running year end, then you wouldn't necessarily need to create another archive. But if you're doing it a little while after running the year end, then it might be something that we normally recommend that you would do. Print any reports. Now, I say if required there. The reason I say if required is you're getting rid of all their information. So do you actually need to print any reports with that information on? Getting rid of it, so you're saying, well, actually, I don't really need that information anymore. So if required, print your reports. Allocate your transactions together. It is one of the most common reasons why transactions aren't cleared, where you might have, let's say, a payment on account and an invoice on the same account, but you've never matched them together. It might be a credit note. Again, you've never allocated them. So both transactions, in theory, behind the scenes, they're still outstanding. Reconcile your bank accounts. Now, some of you will have bank accounts in your bank accounts list that actually you don't do a bank reconciliation on it. So if you've got like a, something like, say, a cash account, or maybe you've got a deposit account where actually you receive a statement, but there's not much activity goes through it. So actually you don't bother reconciling it. So again, because it forms part of the criteria, you've got two options. You can either do a dummy reconciliation, so go through the reconciliation process and you're not too concerned about have transactions cleared or not. You're just going to highlight them all, match them, and sort of click reconcile. Or the other alternative is just to switch off the reconciliation option for that specific bank account, and then it ignores that part of the criteria. That final one I've mentioned there, reconcile your VAT return, not as common these days. Prior to Making Tax Digital being introduced in the UK, we often find that users of Sage 50 accounts, what we would do is you would back that up and give that to the accountant. The accountant would restore that and generate a VAT return. Or you might use other software to generate the VAT return, so actually not bother generating it from Sage 50. So actually you were never as such VAT reconciling your transactions in Sage 50. But since the introduction of Making Tax Digital, seems a long time ago that now. So since that introduction, obviously, your requirement is to start using your software to generate your VAT return and do your submission online. So not as common, that final one these days. But if you've got older transactions, maybe prior to Making Tax Digital, you might have been using Sage for years and years. So you might have historic information on there prior to MTD where actually you weren't using the VAT return option. But again, it might be you do a dummy VAT return just so you can flag those transactions. Right, I think we talked enough about the theory. So what we'll do is we'll get stuck into the demonstration. I've got a couple of points on that slide there that it's what you need to think about first before you actually just rush in and clear your audit trail. So one, are you sure it's what you want to do? Make sure you've got a good understanding of what it does. If you haven't, or you're not 100% sure that it's what you want to do, then don't do it. Remember, it's optional. But there are those pros and cons, remember. When to clear up to. That's the other thing to think about if you are going to proceed with clearing audit trail. How far back do you, in your live company, do you need that full transaction history to go? Do you need it your current financial year plus one, your previous one? Do you need it to go further back? So think about how far back you would need that data to go. If you need it to go back to since you started using Sage, then Clear Audit Trail is not for you. But if you've got information that's 3, 4, 5 years old, possibly even longer, then you might be thinking, well, actually, I don't refer to that information transaction-wise. I'll get rid of it. If you need to discuss those, get in touch with our support team. Right, what we'll do, I'll run through a quick demonstration then. So I'll switch across to my screen. I'm going to be using Sage 50 Accounts Professional today. I'm actually using version 32.1, so we're just about to release an update for version 32. So this is what it looks like. See a new bar at the top if you've got Copilot activated, that type of thing. So watch out for things like that. Now, this set of data that we're using today, it's an older set that I use for this demonstration. And the financial year, you'll see that on the toolbar at the bottom. The financial year in this instance starts January 2024. So we're way past the year-end date on this set of data. So we got January 24 to December 24 essentially that's the current financial year. So I can't clear up to a date beyond the 1st of January 2024. I've got to clear to a date prior to that. Now, it's very common if you are going to clear your audit trail that you think, well, I need all of the current year and I need all of the previous financial year as well. So I want all of 2024 and all of 2023, but also anything beyond that as well. So what I'm going to do on this set of data is I'm going to clear up to essentially the 31st of December 2023. Is that right? No, sorry, 2022, I should say. So I've got that 2024 and 2023. Just writing that down to remind myself so I don't have to work that out again in a moment. So that's when I'm going to clear up to. Now to start that going, you need to go to tools, and it's worth mentioning at this point as well that I would need all of the other users to be logged out. This is what we would term an exclusive program request. So you would need all users logged out of your company while you complete this. Clear Audit Trail potentially can take a little while to run through. It depends how many transactions you've got. So it might be one of those tasks that you think, well, actually, because of the disruption, I'll just do this sort of once everyone's finished for the day, or that type of thing when it's a quieter period. So anyway, we're going to go into tools at the top. I'm going to go to period end, and this is where you find the Clear Audit Trail option. So tools, period end, Clear Audit Trail. This is the window I get. So it gives me a little bit of information about Clear Audit Trail. So some of that criteria that I just mentioned a few moments ago, it's got that listed. So it's saying, right, transactions can only be removed if they're dated on or before the date we specify, etc. And it does recommend, in the note there, we recommend you keep at least one financial year of live data. So your current year plus the previous one. So clear transactions up to and including, this is where you would specify the date. You can see it's actually defaulted to the right date that I'm going to be using. So the end of, or the last day prior to the start of my previous financial year. I can change that obviously if I want to. Now, some of you will get this option as well. So we mentioned as part of that criteria that bank accounts need to be reconciled. Now, if you've got some bank accounts that have never been reconciled, they'll be identified on this list here. So this is where the reconciliation option, it's still active for that bank account, but I've never reconciled it. So what it would mean is any transactions posted against the likes of account 1210, if I go to clear the audit trail, because they're not flagged as reconciled, it's not going to clear them because that, again, that's part of the criteria. So it's saying, gives me a couple of options here. I can turn off the bank reconciliation for that specific account, just by ticking the box. Or the other one I could have done, which is equivalent of ticking this box, is if I just close out for the time being and go into bank accounts, so on the toolbar on the left, bank accounts, and I find this bank deposit account, I'll go into it, and I've got this little checkbox in the bank reconciliation area, so no bank reconciliation. So I can tick that to say, right, actually, I don't need to reconcile. I don't want to reconcile that specific bank record. So I'll leave that one ticked. Save those changes. Close out. Let's go back to the Clear Audit Trail option. So remember, Tools, Period End, Clear Audit Trail. Just closes those windows in the background again. So this time, again, still picked up the right date for me, but this time it hasn't picked up 1210 in that bottom section. Yours might not identify any. You might have been reconciling them. I've also got 1220 listed there. So what I'm going to do for this one is I'm just going to tick the box. That's the equivalent of going into that bank account record and clicking that box to say no bank reconciliation. So if I'm happy and I want to proceed, I've got the right date entered in this instance, got that ticked. I'm going to click Clear Audit Trail. Now it forces me at this stage to take a backup. I can't get around that. If I just cancel out, and it just says you must back up your data to run this option. So you've got to run through that. So do you want to create a backup of your data now? Yes, it'll take me back to that prompt. Now, I want to make sure I include all of my data files. And again, going back to that point, the reason you take a backup is if you do that and you think, well, actually, hasn't worked how I want, or maybe you just need to get back to this point in time for whatever reason, where it was prior to clearing audit trail, you've got that backup available. So all I'm going to include in this one is data files. I'm going to give it a file name. Obviously, you might use your company name, you might put Sage in there. I'll just do pre-cat for pre-clear audit trail. And then I'll just put today's date in there. I might even put the date in when I actually chose to clear up to. So we'll be descriptive as you want on that file name. Location-wise, I'm just going to pop this onto my desktop. Obviously, you can browse and choose where you want to store that backup. And then when I'm ready, we click OK. So would you like to check your data before you back up? I would always prompt you, click yes to that prompt. Again, if your check data normally takes a little while to run through, choose a quieter period for completing this task. Now mine's very quick. I've only got 5,000 transactions on there. next to nothing really. So no problems to report on my data file, so that's nearly instant on mine. So we'll just OK that. Tells me there's no errors, no warnings, no comments. If you did have anything reported at this point, so if it came up with an error, warning or comment, you can click the link on the side here and it will give you more detail as to what that is. And then you can use the help at the top to search for that error, warning or comment to find out what it means, but also what you need to do about that. But no problems on mine, so we'll just close out of this window. And then we start seeing the progress bar. Now, again, that's incredibly quick on mine. If you're running across a network or you've got hundreds of thousands of transactions, it's going to take longer than what mine just has. Mine's nearly instant. Powerful laptop I'm working on, and it's local data on my hard drive. So it tells me the backup has been successful. It's then got a progress bar at the bottom here. So we just let that run through. Again, more data you have, the longer it's going to take. So it's telling me that 1,290 transactions have been removed from my audit trail. So all of those transactions out of the 5,088 I originally had, it's got rid of nearly 1,300 of them. So that's quite a big chunk. And it tells me if you would like to view the details of these transactions, please select the checkbox below. So I'm going to click the box, view remove transactions. Just OK that. That runs the report for me. This might be something that you maybe export and maybe save as a PDF. Again, you can choose that wherever you want to save it to. Put it on the desktop, give it a file name. I'll just accept the default. And that's it done. So this is the information that's been removed essentially. It's got, you can see the transaction numbers, it's got the details, etc. Quite a lengthy report that. 147 pages, so probably not something that you're going to be sat there printing out. And let's face it, that information that has been removed, you've got rid of it because you no longer need it in your live company. Right, I'm just going to close out at that point. It takes me back to the clear audit trail. So in a month's time, I might think, well, actually, I've now bank reconciled. There might be more transactions that I want to get rid of, but still up to the same date. So that date there, I might think, well, in a month's time, I'll try clearing it again, see if it can get rid of anything else now. So I'll just close. So chances are it's something you're going to run, but only after you've run year end. So that's the timing of it normally. Now you can see in this instance, we did have 5,088 transactions. You think, well, we got rid of information. So why is your transaction numbers gone up? Why is it increased? So I did mention on that very first slide at the beginning that it may be necessary to post some opening balances. If I go into that transactions list, you can see on the end of my transactions list, so my audit trail, I've got some transactions which are dated on the date that I cleared the audit trail up to. And these are all journals. So I go to 5,088, which is where my transactions originally went up to. Just scroll up. So from 5,099 onwards, we got some journals. You can see the nominal codes that the opening balance journal has had to have been posted to. So in this case, it's had to post a journal credit to this specific nominal code for this amount. So that's the difference between the debits and the credit transactions from that nominal code that have been removed. So to maintain that balance, it's posted a journal credit for that amount to that nominal code, just so that the activity and that history balance is retained essentially. So that's why your transactions or the transaction numbers might increase. Now, if I need to see how many transactions I've got left, and I saw Tracy mentioned this one at the end. Where can you actually see how many transactions I actually have? So this number here, this 5133, it just relates to the last transaction number that I've entered. What it doesn't do is tell me actually how many transactions have you got, how many remain on the audit trail. To find that, we would just go into help and then about. So help about, it'll load this window for you. And what we're after is in this middle section, just scroll down a little bit. So in the middle column, you've got this data information, and it's the splits number that you're after. So the individual transaction lines, that's how many we're left with. So we had about 5,088. It removed about 1,300. It did have to post some opening balances, but we're left with 3,843. Obviously, you could multiply that up by, however many transactions you have. So I hope that answers that one for you, Tracy. So I think Laura picked that one up for you. Right, let's just close out of that window. And that's basically the clear audit trail complete. So it's a straightforward wizard. It was just tools, period end, clear audit trail. We entered the dates. We ticked a few boxes, some bank accounts that we didn't want to reconcile. We wanted to ignore that part of the criteria. And we let it run through, and we took a backup along the way and checked the data as well. So quite a simple task to go through. But leads us on nicely to, if I go back to the slides, that common question after people have cleared the audit trail. So why haven't my transactions cleared? So I'm looking at my transactions list, and I've got some that are dated prior to the date that you are cleared up to. Why is it still there? Well, it comes back to that criteria that we mentioned earlier. If a transaction is still there and you think, well, actually it meets that criteria, have a look at that criteria, work through it again. Have a look at the transaction in transactions and try and work out, see if you can find out why a specific transaction hasn't cleared. So for instance, if we go back to my screen, I'll pop into the transactions list. Let's go right to the top. I'll just drag the cursor up to go up to the top. You can see the first transaction I've got is transaction number 1. You'll start seeing gaps in between them as well where transactions have been cleared. But transaction number 1, it's dated in 2014. Why hasn't that one been cleared? Well, first of all, the date, that meets the criteria. So what's not on there? Just start working along. You can see, well, actually, paid, it's got an N. So this transaction's still outstanding on the software. So it might be that actually we had a payment on account at the time that we hadn't allocated. So it's not flagged the transaction as being paid. It might be a credit note. Again, we hadn't allocated. So the transaction isn't flagged as paid. So it hasn't been in a position where it can remove it. So it's just a case of working through that criteria for your transactions. Hopefully you'll find the reason why. If you can't, and I've included this on the handout, there's a help center link at the bottom there. Why is Clear Audit Trail not removed some transactions? So that will guide you through that process, checking the transaction against the criteria, but also potentially providing you with some additional reports that you can download and use in Sage, and it will try and identify why it hasn't removed certain transactions. So that's Clear Audit Trail. So coming back to those common questions at the beginning, again, some of you might not have been paying attention at the beginning, but just to get a quick recap on those common questions, you might be thinking, actually, now I've got that question, have I got to do that? No, it's optional. Can't stress that one enough. It's something that's optional. Yes, there are pros and cons, but it is optional. You don't have to do it. When? Well, if you're going to run it, you'd probably run it after you've run year end, but you can run that at any time. How often? Well, again, because you associate it with year end, you'd probably run that once a year, if at all. And pros and cons, remember, the less information you have, so getting rid of your older information, it means the more efficient your software is going to run. So backups are going to be smaller, check data that bit quicker, reports should be that bit quicker. By how much? You will only know once you've cleared. Nobody can say, right, well, you've got 100,000 transactions. You run this report now, it's going to take you 5 minutes. If you clear the audit trail up to 2 years ago, it's going to run in sort of 2/3 of that time. Nobody's going to know that. Only you will know that by trying it. So efficiency, speed-wise, how much you would gain, how much would you benefit from that, only you will be able to tell that once you've cleared that audit trail. Right, brings us to the end of the demos, end of the webinar itself. If you've got any final questions, please pop them into the questions panel. We're just about on top of all of the questions that have been coming through today. Hopefully we've answered the majority of them with the demonstration today as well. But if you've got any final questions, do take that opportunity to quickly pop them in there. Remember, a copy of the handout, you can download those slides. Obviously, it includes the criteria, it includes a few links as well. You can do that now while you're on the session, then you've got that. You will find detailed information in our help center should you want it. And remember, the link to today's recording will be included on your follow-up email, which you will receive in round about an hour's time. So if you need a bit of a recap as and when you're ready to do that, or maybe you start thinking about clear audit trail and then you want to discuss it with your colleagues, they're saying, well, how do you do it? You can share that with them as well. You get that in round about an hour. Now, we mentioned the webinar series for the digital badge. If you're interested in signing up for any of the additional sessions or any of the other topics we run, head along to our webinars page, sage.co.uk/webinars. You have the option to access both the webinars for Sage 50 Accounts and Sage 50 Payroll, live sessions and the recordings. So if you are interested, have a good look through that live timetable, see what's there. We'll shortly be, by the end of next week, we should have all of October's timetable published. So do have a good look through that and get yourself registered for some of those sessions. Obviously, they're all free to attend, other than giving up a little bit of your time here and there. Link will be included on your follow-up email. Right, still no questions outstanding, so we'll we're just about ready to end the webinar at that point. If you think of anything after you've left, either check the help center, loads of great information in there, or get in touch with our support team. But just want to quickly thank you for attending today. Hope you've enjoyed it, found it useful, even if it's just sort of maybe reassured you that actually you were wondering what clear audit trail is, and maybe it's just confirmed to you that actually you don't want to run it, or maybe you do. Whichever way, hopefully you've learned something today and feeling a lot more confident. If you can take a minute to complete the survey that pops up as you leave the session today, it'd be greatly appreciated. It's all we ask. Webinars are free to attend. Just give us a little bit of feedback. Have we hit the mark or not? Is there anything you'd like to see going forward? So take that minute. That would be really appreciated. Your follow-up email will be with you in round about an hour's time. Right, so we'll end the webinar at that point. Many thanks for coming along, and hopefully we'll see you on some of the other sessions very, very soon. Many thanks.